Welcome back to another Words of Plainness podcast. I'm Aaron Powner, and this is my guided overview for Chapter 9, Yehoshua the Man. If you've been reading through the Learn of Me section, you've already walked through the prophecies of his birth, the beginning of his ministry, his baptism, and temptations. You've started to see who he is. This chapter slows down and asks a different kind of question, not what he did, but who he was while he was doing it. I want to be honest with you about something before you read it. When I first started studying the Gospels with this question in mind, who is this man, personally? I expected to find a kind of moral blueprint, a list of virtues, something to imitate. What I found was different. I found a person, fully human, someone who got tired, who grieved, who felt the full weight of the people around him, and who governed every one of those feelings with a completeness I have never seen in anyone else. We use the name Yehoshua in this chapter. That was his given name, the Hebrew name his mother spoke over him as a child, the name his disciples called across the water. It grounds him. It reminds us that we are not studying an abstraction, we are studying a man. And yes, he was and is God. But he chose to move through the world as a mortal, to be known as one, to be worth knowing as one. The chapter is organized around 8 aspects of his character, 8 ways that grace showed itself in how he moved through the world. We begin with humility, not the false humility of self-deprecation, but the genuine humility of a man who could have claimed everything and instead submitted to everything. He washed feet. He said plainly that the Father was greater than he was. If you have ever wondered what it looks like to carry enormous authority without grasping at it, watch him. Obedience comes next. And I want to be careful here, because obedience is often taught as the refusal of evil. The chapter expands this definition to one that took me a long time to see. His obedience wasn't only the refusal of evil, it was also the refusal of good that was not the Father's will. Every temptation he faced in the wilderness was a temptation towards something that seemed good. Bread when he was starving, protection, legitimate authority over the kingdoms of the world. He refused them all. Despite their apparent goodness, Jesus knew that the Father had given him a different path to follow. That distinction changed how I understand obedience entirely. Compassion. This section is the longest in the chapter, and I make no apology for that. The Gospels give us more raw material on his compassion than on almost anything else. He reached toward people that his culture told him not to touch. He stopped in the middle of crowds. He asked people what they wanted before he healed them. His compassion was never vague. It was always aimed at a specific person in a specific moment with a specific need. Teaching. He was the most effective teacher who ever lived. And the chapter tries to say something honest about why, not just because he was God, but because he taught the way he lived, with questions instead of lectures, with stories that forced people to place themselves inside the moral dilemma rather than observe it from outside. Meekness and courage. These two sit together in the chapter because they cannot be separated in him. The same man who said, "Blessed are the meek," drove money changers out of the temple with a whip he made with his own hands. Neither canceled the other. That tension, that both of these were fully true of him at the same time, tells us something important about what those words actually mean. Justice and mercy. The same tension in a different form. The woman caught in adultery. The Pharisees waiting for a verdict. He gave justice and mercy simultaneously, without compromising either one. I've thought about that scene more times than I can count. Joy. This one surprised me in my first draft because joy feels almost incongruous in a chapter about a man who also wept at Lazarus's tomb. But he said explicitly in John 15 that his joy was meant to be in us, and that he wanted it to be full. His joy wasn't despite suffering, it existed alongside it. That's a different kind of joy than what the world usually offers. And finally, the Beatitudes as a self-portrait. The chapter closes with the argument that when he stood on the mountain and said, "Blessed are the meek," he wasn't describing an aspiration, he was describing himself. Every beatitude maps onto something we see clearly in the gospel accounts. He was the poor in spirit. He was the one who mourned. He was the peacemaker. He was the pure in heart. He was speaking from the inside out. The governing thesis of the chapter, the thing I want you to sit with as you read, is this. His character is not just a template for self-improvement. It is what grace looks like when it has completed its work in the human life. The chapter does not produce a checklist. Rather, the goal is that when grace begins to do the same work in us, and it does if we let it, we can recognize what is happening. We know what we are becoming because we have seen where it leads. Paul put it plainly in 2 Corinthians. We all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. The beholding and the transformation are not two separate things. They are one movement. That is what chapter 9 is asking you to do. Behold him. Behold him with an unveiled face, without the agenda of winning an argument or confirming what you already believe or protecting yourself from what you might find. Just look at him. All 8 sections are an invitation to that same act. Chapter 9 is the centerpiece of the Learn of Me movement for a reason. Everything before it prepares you to meet him. Everything after it follows him into his suffering, his death, and his resurrection. This chapter is where you stop and actually see who he is before the weight of what he carried comes fully into view. I hope it stays with you. May God bless you in your own discipleship to Jesus Christ. Until next time, I'm Aaron Pauner, and this is Words of Plainness.